I think DJ's first year was 2018. I don't believe he's ever played on a team that's even had a 500 record. I believe every year of his career from Carolina and with the Bears, they've been sub 500. Isn't that incredible?
It is. And, I mean, think about his production despite that. That was what was so intriguing to the Bears when they traded for him. He played with, I think it was 11 or 12 different quarterbacks throughout his time in Carolina, and they knew bringing him here that he's going to be a plug-and-play player that can produce no matter who's throwing in the ball.
All right, Courtney, what was going on there at Halas Hall today? Mandatory minicamp, did it look different than some of the OTAs that you've watched?
Not really, and that was by design, according to Ben Johnson. Like, the script was very similar, especially during the team periods for what they had done during OTAs. Tomorrow, they're going to, and Thursday, they're going to start incorporating some of the call-up periods just so guys don't get fatigued and effectively bored by what they're doing and challenging players, because all that we've talked about for the last couple of weeks is the intensity of these practices, and having it not get stale is the key to keeping those practices intense. So I imagine tomorrow we'll start to see that ramp up a little bit, and we'll start to see things that might be a little different than in weeks past. But some changes today compared to last Wednesday when we were out here during OTAs. It was Karan Amagaji with the ones at left tackle, and then Ozzie Trapillo with the twos, and they've been rotating. That will continue on. Case Keenum was QB3 today, and it was Tyson Bagent as QB2. That's something that Ben Johnson left the door open to happening last week and said there will be a competition for the backup spot, but those are some of like the bigger changes that we saw in a pretty well-attended practice today, aside from some guys that are injured.
That's where I was going. What was the participation level like, and noticeably missing who was on that list?
Well, Luther Burden's still not out there, and I know that Johnson said a couple weeks ago he's got a soft tissue injury. He thought it would take some time, but he's not on the field right now. He's here. All of the guys that you're not seeing out there, whether it's T.J. Edwards, Kyler Gordon, certainly Braxton Jones, who we know is injured and rehabbing, Colston Loveland, they're all here. They're just dealing with stuff that the team does not believe will preclude them from being healthy at the start of training camp. But I guess today, one of the things, just keep an eye on it. Jalen Johnson was out there, of course, the whole day, but not doing much during team drills. That's the opposite of what we saw from Montez Sweat last week, where he wasn't doing team stuff in OTAs and then got more involved in it today.
Courtney, what did you make of the response to your question to DJ Moore and how he handled the conversation about body language?
It's interesting. The body language thing, he knows that it's an issue. Like, it was an issue last year. The cameras caught him. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it's a storyline because he made it a storyline. And when he said that, dealing with it in the off season, he had an instance and he nipped it in the bud and moved on from it. Like, I think these players are being forced to have an internal monologue with themselves, or a dialogue, whatever you want to call it, where they're questioning, am I giving the best effort that I can? Did I execute that play to the best of my ability? Was it perfect? Because they all say, and especially DJ today, that Ben's striving for perfection, knowing that you're not going to get it every single time, but at least put the effort in to get it there. So I think that extends to body language, the way that it's been talked about with Caleb Williams, but also the way that it's being talked about with the players around Caleb.
What do you expect from DJ this year? Because I think him and, I said at the beginning of the show, Courtney, there wasn't one player really who played above what we expected them to play or at that level. And him and Montez Sweat are two guys who are paid to be your best players, and they did not play great last year.
Yeah, it's what I thought was probably, I don't know how you read into this, but when I asked DJ at the end just about the goals that he sets for himself, he's in year 8, like, how different is it going to be when you've done the same thing that you've been successful with for the last 7 seasons? And he said he can't really set a goal for himself right now because he doesn't know exactly what his role is going to be. Now, you can read into that and be like, look, you're a 1,000-yard receiver for the majority of your career. You're probably getting the ball a lot, but he said he's not sure how many touches he's going to get, if it's going to come his way. There are a lot of mouths to feed on this offense. So that's going to be really interesting to watch how the touches are divvied up in between the backfield, between a loaded receiver room, and when Colston Loveland gets on the field, where those go between him and Cole Kmet. But I think for DJ specifically, you're the elder statesman, finally. Like, you're the oldest guy on this team. It was Keenan, or oldest guy in your position room. It was Keenan Allen last year. 140 targets is a lot. But I think that for DJ, it's showing I am the number one receiver on this team. I am the guy that you paid $110 million to last year on a 4-year extension, and I can consistently be that no matter what the ups and downs of the offense look like. So that's probably, when he comes up with writing his goals, whenever he gets to that, it's got to be some form of that. And I think the same extends to Montez Sweat. Like, he got doubled a lot last year. What did they do in the offseason? They went out and got him help along the defensive line, so he won't be dealing with chips and double teams and all of the stuff that makes him less effective, makes most pass rushers less effective. So I also think for him, it's staying on the field more. You know, that could have been a coaching thing. It could be something that's different under Dennis Allen, but you know, in those critical gotta-have-it situations, he can't be off the field. You're paying him $25.5 million a year. Like, that's an absolute non-starter for a player of that caliber. And, you know, given both of them, describing maybe a little disappointment. Certainly from Montez Sweat, he used that word last week. DJ didn't say that today, but you can tell, like, last year was effectively a down year by his standards. To be able to get back to the level he was at when Justin Fields was his quarterback his first season here, I think is ultimately where he's looking at going this year.
And, you know, Waddle and I talked about this before the show, and we're not blaming DJ, but it's just what it is. I think DJ's first year was 2018. I don't believe he's ever played on a team that's even had a 500 record. I believe every year of his career from Carolina and with the Bears, they've been sub 500. Isn't that incredible?
It is. And, I mean, think about his production despite that. But that was what was so intriguing to the Bears when they traded for him. He played with, I think it was 11 or 12 different quarterbacks throughout his time in Carolina, and they knew bringing him here that he's going to be a plug-and-play player that can produce no matter who's throwing in the ball. And that expectation is pretty heavy. Like, that was a big one last year. Like, oh, you're supposed to be the security blanket for Caleb Williams. You're going to help him along in his growth. And when those two weren't on the same page as early as week 2 of the season, you knew that there was some relearning and probably some recalibration that both sides, including the veteran receiver, had to make. But it's different for him now, and I think Cole Kmet highlighted this too, because you know Cole hasn't been on a team that's gone to the playoffs. He's been part of a lot of losing since he's been in Chicago, and he said you almost become used to the chaos, but that this is the last year he expects them to be making these crazy changes, at least during his tenure, because they feel like they got it right with Ben Johnson. And you're seeing that in how players are responding to the coaching and how they're speaking about what the coaching is doing for them in challenging them to be the best version of themselves. And also, but they're able to see, like, there's an end game here. It's not that Ben Johnson's just screaming to scream. It's that he sees something and he's trying to point out something that can help you a lot. Like what Cole said about, when he finally talked about what happened at OTAs 2 weeks ago when he got, the whistle blown and he was out of alignment by a yard. Like, he was cheating himself out of getting the ball. Ben Johnson saw that and said, dude, I'm trying to get you the ball. Like, those are things that I think when players can see proof of concept, that helps in knowing this is why you're being coached this way. If you continue to buy into that coaching, it can lead you to a better place than either of you. Just using those two veterans, for an example, have been to in their careers.
It's funny. It's a great conversation, and I wonder, and it's so early, but do you feel any resistance from any of the vets with regard to the buy-in? And no one should be resting on their laurels after a 5-win season and the disaster it has been over the course of the last several years. But is there, like whether it be DJ or Cole, do you sense any resistance to this? We don't have a depth chart and everyone's competing, because some veterans get used to being catered to.
Well, if they feel that way, then careful what you wish for.
Of course,
might want to have been quiet last year. But I don't get that sense. I really don't. Like, the way that these guys are talking about it, when DJ, said today that he has to, sometimes he'll question himself. Did I go full out on that last play? Was I slacking? Was it perfect? Was it good effort? Like, the coaching is forcing them to think, and it's forcing them out of their comfort zone, and that's good.
Yeah.
I think every veteran that we've talked to has praised Ben Johnson for pointing things out in the moment and saying, this needs to change right now, not letting it go by the wayside is how DeAndre Swift phrased it today. And he played with him he was with him in 2022 when he was with the Lions. He said that he's more stern, more serious now than he was as an offensive coordinator, but that he's seen the scheme evolve. He's seen Ben evolve as a coach, going from OC to head coach. And I think players can, when they see an end game that makes sense and a clear path on how to get there, and proven success from somebody who called a really good offense the last 3 years, that's easy to get behind, whether you're a first-year player or someone like DJ going into year 8.
Courtney, any fun things from on the field today? Cool plays, bad plays? I know it doesn't mean much, but people like the observations.
Yeah, there wasn't. Honestly, this was more of a vanilla practice than I've seen. I think about the other OTAs. It was windy out there, so it was hard to hear what was going on the other side of the field. But it felt like just kind of a ramp up to what we're going to see tomorrow. That's my guess on it. There wasn't anything that was super jarring. There were a couple, Noah Sewell left early due to injury, or at least what appear what was due to injury. But it really wasn't as intense of practices as I know we're talking about that right now, but I've seen more intense based on what we saw in the indoor facility 2 weeks ago and then last week during OTAs. And I imagine that once they start putting some of those call-it periods in, to where they can have some variety and not go and be able to go off script, that you'll start to see that stuff tomorrow.
And real quick, one other question about a player, and that's Rome, who I expect to take a huge step forward. And I think Ben has actually been very complimentary of him. Do you notice anything different about him or how he's being used, even in these very few practices that you've witnessed?
He looks bigger. I know that guys always hit the weight room and it's noticeable, but standing next to him at the Super Bowl, I was down there. He and DJ were doing something for Bounty, the paper towel company. And I remember I was like, oh, wow, it's been a month since we had seen him last. It looks like he's been in the weight room. And then the other day at practice, it's okay, this guy's really taking it seriously. And the jump that you can make in year 2, now knowing that you have somebody who has done this as your position coach, and Antoine Randall and how he's coaching you, there is, again, proof of concept that Rome can follow that I think is really helping him get off to the right start in his second season. He's been, of course, you'll see him all the time with the ones, and he's catching a lot of passes, and he's being utilized, and he will be utilized a lot in that role. The Bears know that they spent a top 9 draft pick on this guy. He's got to be featured in this offense very heavily, and it seems without having seen the full, their full off season, we've only been out here for 3 practices. It does feel like there is that added emphasis on Rome being a big part of things moving forward.
Courtney, before you let you go, and I don't know how much reporting you've done on this yet, but you were in Minnesota, and I believe you were there when they opened up the new stadium. Were you there when they opened it up?
I came a year later. I came in 17, but they opened it in 16.
So it was newer, but... And about it when Kevin Warren was there, too. Now he's here. What do you believe will be next for the Bears on the stadium front now that Springfield didn't even put it on things to discuss for the funding?
It's Arlington Heights, you and I have been talking about for months now. This is where it's been trending. So Kevin Warren said in April, shovels in the ground in 2025, and he expects to move dirt around. That points to they've got one option left for this. It's Arlington Heights or it's nothing. And obviously they need a new stadium. They own the land. The land is ready to be developed. It will be Arlington Heights. I would imagine by training camp they're going to want to have some sort of announcement out about that to kind of help build up momentum for camp and what's next for this team. But the whole Springfield development and just kind of the dead end that they've reached, they gave themselves, whether it was going to work or not, they did give themselves the deadline of the end of this legislative session to be able to exhaust all options with the city, and it just wasn't going to happen. They knew that. They knew that during the process. But I think the way that it trends right now, at least they'll get some closure in the not-too-distant future on what they were trying to achieve in Chicago and being able to move forward with what's going on in Arlington Heights.
You don't think this delays, though, shovels in the ground because the mega funding – or will they just move on and maybe sell part of the team like we've discussed with private equity?
Well, no, they also talked about potentially using private equity to fund the financing of a stadium.
Right.
I think they'd go that route before they would consider private equity for, selling off shares of this team. I don't think they're there yet on that part.
Okay. All right. Courtney, great stuff. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. Take
Thanks,
care.
Courtney.
There's Courtney.